Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Market Intelligence Coffee Chat live coaching series. My name is Marianne Antonelli, and I am the CrowdStrike campaign manager at TD SYNNEX Public Sector. This is episode number 1 for Market Intelligence Coffee Chat series, and today's topic is maximizing sales opportunities through SLED fiscal year and into FY24. And just as a reminder, this is an exclusive webinar for CrowdStrike's authorized resellers. Next slide, please. Before we get started, let's go over a few housekeeping items. Your lines are muted for the duration of the webinar. However, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to drop any questions in the Q&A or chat field. This session will be recorded and accessible at a later point in time. We will have a post-webinar survey that we will be dropping sometime during this particular webinar. Tell us how we did so we can make adjustments for future Coffee Chat series. We really appreciate your feedback on this one, so be on the lookout for that link. If you have any technical questions, please message Felicia directly into the chat. Next slide, please. And now for a brief introduction for today's featured barista. Yvonne Mafia is a senior market insights analyst for public sector intelligence at TD SYNNEX Public Sector. She is covering the state, local, and education markets. She applies insights and analysis to purchasing trends to help vendors and partners shorten their sales cycle. Prior to joining TD SYNNEX Public Sector, Yvonne spent 8 years working in the state and local government, where she oversaw advisory boards across the state of Florida and served as an analyst to a local politician. Yvonne currently lives in Washington, D.C., and in her free time, you can find her hiking, bird watching, and doing yoga. So over to you, Yvonne.
Thanks, Marianne. Welcome, everyone. It's great to be here with you all today for today's coffee chat. Again, my name is Yvonne Mafia, Senior Market Insights Analyst covering SLED with TD SYNNEX Public Sector. So today we're going to cover SLED fiscal year end opportunities that are specific to cybersecurity. It's April, which means SLED fiscal year end is right around the corner. So now is the time to take advantage of where we see the SLED sector placing their biggest bets. You can also view this as a primer or launch point for FY24 budget priorities. Okay, so with that, I'll go ahead and get started with SLED technology spending trends. So fortunately for the SLED market, post-pandemic government stimulus funds, such as those that were allocated from the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, which were designed to boost economic recovery and provide pandemic assistance, coupled with the implementation of the infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, have provided states with sort of a safety net and some insulation from recessionary effects. So states were able to recoup revenue losses using this funding and also kickstart projects that might have been stalled due to funding issues. And as it stands today, states are feeling relatively secure. A lot of this funding still has not been obligated or spent, which provides additional room for new technology acquisitions. Furthermore, primary sources of state funding, right, when we think about property taxes and things of that nature, have been relatively unaffected by the economic downturn. However, as we all know, we should keep in mind that these effects are not permanent. They're not a panacea for all government funding issues, so they will start to wear thin as the stimulus funds do begin to dry up. Now, the IT addressable market for 2023 is hovering right around $137 billion, representing ample opportunity for new technology acquisitions. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so echoing what I just covered on state spending trends, overall state reserves are up and rainy day fund balances continued to grow in fiscal year 2022 after increasing about 58% in fiscal year 2021. Now, the median balance as a share of general fund spending for states is projected to be just around 12% in fiscal year 2023. So for counties, it's close to 36%, cities 25%, and K through 12, 16%. And I've highlighted here on the right a few specific examples of states with budget surpluses in 2023. Now, all of the states listed here could be great insertion points for CrowdStrike, as they have the funding available to be more innovative with their adoption of new technology tools and solutions to meet their current cybersecurity needs. Okay, next slide, please. So each of the categories I have here listed above represents translatable opportunities for CrowdStrike. So top-down initiatives trickling down from the national agenda, top drivers and top SLED priorities, pain points, all play a role in the developing need for technologies that support enhanced cybersecurity. So from a holistic standpoint, the post-pandemic era of modernization has clearly exposed the fragility of public sector technology infrastructure and systems, widening attack surfaces, and posing additional challenges for SLED leaders. So these continually evolving security threats, ranging from election security breaches, nation-state actors, threats to critical infrastructure, ransomware attacks, hacktivism, right? All of these components of security are creating a heightened threat landscape, and SLED leaders have identified cybersecurity and risk management as their top FY23 priority once again. So as SLED entities continue these efforts in digitization and modernization, enhancing operations and focusing on that citizen experience, including the education component, which is, students with minimal access to the internet, they're facing challenges around things like regulatory compliance requirements, the risks of having outdated legacy systems, malware attacks such as ransomware, phishing and social engineering attacks, and then these gaps that we're seeing with cybersecurity talent gap shortages. Now, the majority of SLED entities are now utilizing emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence and machine learning, IoT, blockchain, cloud computing, big data analytics, right? All of these things to enhance their service delivery and become more efficient and effective. The addition of these new technologies is also creating additional vulnerabilities that really need to be addressed and prioritized. So for instance, remote and hybrid work environments and an increase in the coupling of critical infrastructure and digitization have expanded the cyber attack surface for state and local governments. So cyber criminals and advanced persistent threat actors are unfortunately taking advantage of existing gaps and vulnerabilities associated with these poorly secured government systems, and they're attacking critical services. We've seen this around areas such as election and voting systems, for instance. And another example, the lack of MFA implementation continues to be a problem across the public sector, particularly in school systems that are affected by ransomware and who are working with an influx of student data. So managing access for remote workers, integration across services, and sophistication of platforms to manage these modern, connected anywhere models are all factors affecting SLED entities. Now, these agencies and institutions, they really need to be able to reduce attack surfaces and ensure that they have regulatory compliance while simultaneously managing emerging risks. So this is a great opportunity for CrowdStrike's threat intelligence tools to come into play, right? As agencies need to have that visibility and the capabilities to detect patterns and become more resilient. If they can identify these emerging threats and they have pattern visibility and continuous monitoring, they then lessen the potential of a serious breach or attack. Now, some of the top influencers that have implications for CrowdStrike are the issuance of the National Cybersecurity Strategy and related federal directives, such as the bipartisan Fiscal 2023 Omnibus Spending Agreement. Now that included a big boost for CISA and NIST. We also have seen federal efforts to combat ransomware influence state leaders' security agendas, such as executive orders and Congress's establishment of the Joint Ransomware Task Force, which is essentially an interagency body that's aimed at decreasing the frequency and severity of ransomware attacks. Furthermore, NASCIO issued its 2023 Federal Advocacy Priorities List. So in that, state leaders have echoed the need for a robust bipartisan security strategy between state and federal partners. And a key element of this federal-state partnership is the increased emphasis on cross-sector information sharing and data sharing and partnerships that are built around cybersecurity threats. So this will require the threat intelligence capabilities that CrowdStrike can provide. State CISOs are also hoping to utilize cybersecurity-related funding initiatives, such as IJA's $1 billion cybersecurity grant program, to really jumpstart their cybersecurity strategies. It's not a huge sum of money, but state leaders are really hoping that they can kind of kickstart their cybersecurity plans and strategies. And it's just representing an overall support system from the federal government. States and localities are also following behind federal security standards, and they're moving towards the adoption of things like zero trust models for their agencies. And IAM is becoming a top pillar of that. So thinking, for example, of a couple of state examples, Illinois, for example, is a state that has adopted several zero trust architecture principles into their cybersecurity practice. And they're really prioritizing taking a serious inventory of their endpoints. And Louisiana is actually another state that has incorporated zero trust frameworks into their in-depth defense strategy. And they're saying that it's really a priority that they focus on this type of security from that standpoint. CISOs are also upping focus on the adoption of modernization and digitization efforts, with state leaders seeking out innovative technology solutions to bridge any gaps in security. So for instance, many states are seeking out contracting opportunities with managed service providers, and they're stressing the need for public-private partnerships to address common pain points and security shortfalls. So as we begin to approach SLED fiscal year end and we move into the next fiscal year, there will be continued increased demand for cybersecurity related vendor solutions, such as the ones that CrowdStrike can provide. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so here I've highlighted the top states and localities, top budgets, top IT budgets. So naturally, the larger the IT budget, the more wiggle room that exists for new technology acquisitions. Now, these top states, counties, and municipalities represent top customers that are buying tools and solutions related to all of the pain points and priorities I just covered. So this paints the picture for our buying landscape. Take California, for instance. California has a $451 billion state budget, and their IT budget is close to $13 billion. So California alone represents a huge opportunity market. And then Florida, for instance, recently made a $100 million multi-year pledge towards cybersecurity efforts and bolstering their overall cybersecurity posture. If we want to get more region specific, narrowing down into counties, Miami-Dade County has a budget close to $9 billion, which is an enormous county budget. So all of the states and localities listed here represent a viable market for CrowdStrike. In terms of vertical specific acquisitions, we've actually seen a lot of continued demand for security tools and solutions related to threat detection, endpoint detection, and network security services. And we've seen this predominantly within the general services, education, and transportation verticals. So some of the top states seeking these specific solutions are Louisiana, California, Florida, Illinois, and Connecticut. Not all of them represented here on this list, but it's a great mix of those states with top IT budgets and those without. There's also a trend line showing an abundance of CrowdStrike acquisitions within the general services and transportation verticals. So I just wanted to highlight that we have seen a lot of CrowdStrike's acquisitions within those verticals, and there continues to be that trend. So I wanted to point out all of these procurement trends to show a sampling of specific trends that can be helpful when identifying these fiscal year-end opportunities and then future opportunities as we move into FY24. Okay, so next slide. All right, so in order to add some more granularity to cybersecurity spend nationwide, I've added a heat map here highlighting state cybersecurity spend for 2022, with top spend spanning from the darkest shaded states to the lightest. Now, this quantifies spending based on transactions, procurement transactions, and cybersecurity keywords. So we made sort of a guesstimate here based on these cybersecurity keywords, and then fleshed out the data to show a representation of these top spenders. So on the left here is the breakdown of the top 10 states spending the most money on cybersecurity tools and solutions. As we can see from the chart, Texas, for instance, spends the most money on cybersecurity based on transactional and procurement data. Texas also happens to have the largest cybersecurity budget out of any state. So I wanted to highlight all of these states as a means for CrowdStrike to be able to pinpoint those region-specific opportunities that are already showing trend lines indicating a current and future demand for CrowdStrike's solutions. Okay, next slide, please. So adding another angle of opportunity for CrowdStrike, these are the top 10 states with the largest amount of data breaches. So California, for instance, leads the way here with an unfortunate total of 1,338 total breaches, and that includes 3 of the worst attacks that occurred during fiscal year 2022. Now, Florida is 4th on this list. And they actually have more specific data security challenges around healthcare. So when we think about states that will need the most assistance in bolstering their cybersecurity postures with things like threat detection and continuous monitoring and those intelligence tools that CrowdStrike can provide, these states have faced and are facing the greatest challenges in terms of data security. So they'll be prime opportunity targets. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so here I've highlighted the top 10 most highly regulated states. So California happens to be the most heavily regulated state in the nation, with a total of 395,608 total regulatory restrictions. States typically have about 135,000, give or take, regulatory restrictions within the administrative rules category. Administrative and support services, including employment services, collection agencies, and telephone call centers, things like that, totaled about 387,000 restrictions nationwide. And Texas has the highest number of regulations within this sector. California, Colorado, Connecticut, Utah, and Virginia have also enacted comprehensive consumer data privacy laws, which boosts the need for cybersecurity as we're seeing data privacy and data security continue to work in tandem with one another. So these are all leading indicators of a growing and emerging cybersecurity need as they're going to go hand in hand with compliance requirements. These 10 states will most likely have the most compliance requirements, generating a need for additional cybersecurity solutions. Okay, so this concludes the end of my presentation, and thank you all for joining me today. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you now, Caleb.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. First, I just wanted to thank you, Vaughn, for taking the time to go over this. This is great information for everybody, and I know this is definitely valuable when it comes to prospecting moving forward in support of CrowdStrike and our customers. So, wanted to thanks again, and then also I wanted to remind everyone if you have any questions, please reach out to marketintelligence@dlt.com or the regular sales alias that you reach out to at CrowdStrike@dlt.com. Because we'd be more than happy to set up any other additional conversations or questions you might have around this. This is the first of many of these series we'll be having. The next one is around the federal year end, and that's going to be May 11th. We'll have one of these monthly moving forward pretty much through the rest of the calendar year. So please, our team will continue to evangelize and push registration. So please sign up and pass along these invites to anyone else on your all's teams you think might find beneficial. We have a number of different things coming up. There will be a post survey that's dropped into the chat and also via email. So please take the time to fill that out because there's things you're looking to understand or have more questions that'd be great to understand so we can make sure that we're updating these as we continue to improve these moving forward. And then just again, thanks for attending, and you guys should receive an email soon just with a little thank you from us, a couple of dollars to get yourself a drink or something at Starbucks. So thank you guys again, and I'll open it up for questions and pass it back to Mary Ann.
All right, I am getting some questions here. Let's see. I have a question. What are some key aspects of SLED selling that companies should be aware of heading into SFYE?
Okay, so let's think about the federal year end is September 30th, while for most SLED governments, it's June 30th. Tax-supported governments typically adhere to that spend it or lose it budgeting principle that cut unused funds from the next budget cycle. So to take advantage of opportunities within the SLED market during fiscal year end, you'll want to focus your efforts on those agencies who are eager to spend their remaining funds with that use it or lose it mentality. So become familiar with each buyer's procurement preferences, utilize contract vehicle purchases, and then really show support for that bid process. You should also have a keen understanding of how your customers procure solutions and the corresponding procurement codes. Effective communication will also be key in ensuring there are no gaps in understanding. And then I really suggest researching specific timelines and trends. That will be important to develop an understanding of how to craft messaging and strategy, especially since not all states go into that end of year buying frenzy. So for instance, some governments, they really like to spend a lot right after an election and close to nothing before, right? That's just an example. And then further, some states operate on a biennial budget cycle in which 2 budget years are passed at one time. So in that case, you'll want to get in front of states before they implement their budgets, and it'll be important to stay mindful of each state's specific timeline. So if a state does operate on a biennial cycle, you'll need to factor that into your sales strategy, with the understanding that if you happen to miss the mark in terms of deadlines for engagement, you'll have to wait even longer before you get your product or solution to market. So become familiar with each state and its specific timeline and buying preferences. And to create an ideal timeline for your go-to-market strategy, keep in mind that the state budget process begins over the summer, when departments and agencies begin to evaluate priorities and plans. Q1 begins in July and is a great time to work with SLED customers to really start to understand their pain points and new budget priorities. And then familiarize yourself with any large-scale project plans and preferred buying methods. If you can demonstrate how another SLED entity has employed your solution in the past, you'll be that much more likely to gain ear. Developing a sales strategy prior to the budget planning phase will really help lay the foundation for success.
All right, thanks, Yvonne. I have another question here. How do I get end users to talk to me at the state or local level, especially when they see my call or email as a spam?
So state CIOs have actually reported that the most effective way to engage in that fruitful dialogue with them is for you to really get to know their state ahead of time. So before you go into those meetings, before you reach out via email, and before you have those phone conversations, understand their priorities, specific state challenges, what are their buying preferences, what's their governance structure, rather than simply aiming to outline how you can address general pain points. So develop a long-term relationship with SLED buyers and express real genuine interest in the state's overall mission and vision. By playing the long game and investing time and research into the relationship building process, you'll be that much more likely to see profitable results for both parties. They've also mentioned from time to time that having a local presence is critical. So if you can take advantage of that face-to-face time and aim to have a boots on the ground approach, that will definitely be in your favor. And if utilizing electronic communication methods, just really remember to be respectful of end user time and email. Be a listener when conversation is started. Always be truthful and attentive, and don't be overbearing with questions and perks that make you look like spam. So present yourself as a collaborator or researcher and not a pesky salesperson. Identify what their dream solution is with the intel that you have, and then tailor your solution to meet their goals through messaging.
Great. Okay, let's see. I see one other question here. Let's see. You mentioned emerging technologies. Can you speak to generative AI, whether state and local governments are using, and some of the implications down the road?
Sure. So chatbots like ChatGPT and others are all the rage right now, right? It's important to note that state and local governments are already using AI-powered chatbots to automate tasks such as Medicaid enrollment, right? Driver's license renewals and small business resources. But the next generation of artificial intelligence, including ChatGPT, has the potential to revolutionize the way that governments interact with citizens, which again is a focal point when we think about SLED governments. Enhancing interactions and enhancing service delivery with citizens is one of the top priorities. So right now, I would say it's an exploratory phase to see how ChatGPT and others can do things like eliminate the need for lists of citizen-facing links and generate more detailed responses that mimic human conversation, or make work processes and internal searches for government employees exponentially more efficient. But with this adoption will come the need for reducing cybersecurity risk, to make sure fraudulent or deceptive content isn't disseminated from the state or local governments, for example. And related to that, to ensure that artificial intelligence is not compromised through injection of bad code or data. There's also the need to wall off sensitive or classified information from the AI so that such information isn't disclosed publicly.
All right, I think I am not seeing any more questions. We'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. And listen, sign up for the next market intelligence webinar. It's on dlt.com/CrowdStrike. We look forward to the next coffee break. Thanks, everybody.